Hi, everyone. I'm here today with my good friend Dawn. I am so excited. We're talking all things back to school organization. She is the guru when it comes to keeping her classroom organized. I've learned lots of things over the years from her. And I'm going to share some of my tips as well. But before we get into talking about classroom organization, I'm going to let Dawn introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her experience in the field. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Heather. Thanks so much for having me. I am excited to be here. And just a little bit about me. I'm Dawn Ellis. I've been teaching for 15 years in various roles in special education and mostly in the elementary and lower middle school, some preschool as well. And so during those years, we've done a variety of self-contained resource and in those preschool settings, like collaboration classes as well. So I am excited to be here. When I'm not teaching, I am a boy mom of one and also have a podcast and teacher shop. And so we definitely stay busy over here. And I'm excited to share some of my lessons learned, both the easy and the hard way, to hopefully help special ed teachers set up a successful classroom for the upcoming year.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're thinking about the school year already. I feel like summer just like flew by. Um, so as teachers are starting to get keys to their classrooms, maybe they're accepting their first job, maybe it's your third job, and maybe it's a new school, or maybe it's the same classroom you've been in. Why is classroom so important to have and like maintain throughout the year?
So, a lot of times with your classroom, it is the home base for a lot of students. It is where they feel safe. It is where routines start and end. And so, by taking time before the school year begins or at the very beginning of a school year and assessing your space for how you want to create and cultivate a place for your learners over this next school year is so imperative for their journey in this year of education. But also, it helps you have a system in place to feel successful, to not only meet the academic needs, but the paperwork needs that we have as special ed teachers that we have to meet during the year.
Yeah, I love that you're already going like it helps the students. And I'm like, no, it helps me stay organized. It helps my
But also, that's the real
paraprofessionals.
truth.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I need to know where my lessons are. I need to know where my sub plans are. I need to know where all my student materials are. Any IEPs, data collection, my library, all my books need to be in my classroom library. Like all the organization stuff that goes into it. I know you're probably all getting overwhelmed listening to me think about all the things. But I am like type A and need that organization to know like, here's my lessons for today. Here's the data collection I took today. Like, and it all
Yeah.
needs to be in a spot just to kind of help streamline your day and make it go faster. So,
Sure. Yeah. And I think that knowing that that is your personality, and there's so many different personalities, but knowing what's important to you and kind of writing those things down and kind of coming up with a game plan at the beginning definitely helps build that structure for what you need and what you can provide to your students as well. And knowing that it doesn't all have to be perfect the first day because things have to shift and pivot as you meet your students and what their current needs are, because it may be different than what you may have experienced last year or what you've heard about.
yeah, I'm just thinking now schedules, the amount of schedule changes that will happen in the next coming months. You think you have a good schedule, and then the organization of it will change and
Yeah.
something will need to change. So just be
Like if
flexible and
you're under
understand.
20 changes, like you're pro
Solid.
level because
Yeah.
even 15 years in, I mean, the amount of schedule changes, oh, it just hurts my mind.
You just got to let it go. It's one thing you cannot control is the schedule.
For sure.
So, as we're getting into our classrooms, like I feel like there is always a moment or an hour or two that you're just standing in the room and just like, what do I do? Where do I start? What do I need to tackle first? So, what is always the first thing you tackle every year?
Sure. So assessing my space is step number one here. But so you begin by assessing your current classroom setup. Take a moment just to look around your space
Mhm.
and think about how it serves you and the educational needs and activities of your students, as well as their specific needs. By taking
Mhm.
those things into consideration, you're able to consider the following questions. Is it accessible to all the learners that will be accessing the classroom? Is the layout conducive to the movement that needs to happen for the learners that are on my caseload as well as the interaction. Do I need spaces for kids to pace back and forth? Do we need a sensory area for students that get way overstimulated and need a home base, but can still listen to instruction that's happening?
Mhm.
And then once you think of the layout and of everything, it helps you to evaluate your classroom efficiently. And so having different considerations for those mobility, those sensory, those academic needs, it definitely lets you guide you to improve and create a space that is effective, or at least create a foundation. And then once
Mhm.
you get your kids in the room and you have the para staff that you may be working with, then you're able to pivot and move things as students' needs come available, as what you see is what they need. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's always the hardest part is mapping out your classroom, like with what physical things you have, like
Sure.
if it's storage or if it's student desks. There was one year I had this really cool vision of a U. I really wanted my kids'
Yeah.
desks in a U, and so I could stand in the middle and be with every single kid at once. And then I got a student who used a wheelchair, and I put him towards the back of the U, the bottom of the U, if you would say. And so to access the board, he had to go all the way around the U. So my
Yeah.
U ended up as two L's, which was fine with me.
Okay. There you go.
Um,
They made it
but
accessible.
I didn't realize it until he was in the classroom. And I was like,
Right.
this is such a hassle for him to go all the way around. So let me separate it so he can come right up the middle. Then
There
I'll
you
put his
go.
desk right next to it. He'll come right up. And it just made it easier. And sometimes you're right, that you have to wait for the kids to get there to fully see it. Or your sensory corner is too close to the instruction. Yes, you want a
Yeah.
space to do that, but like sometimes it's a decompression area. And if a student is screaming, that might be disruptive to the learning that's going on in the class. So yeah, you figure all of that out totally at the beginning.
Yeah, but I think that kind of walking into the school year with just basic components of like, do you want student desk areas? Do you want a teacher area? Do you need
Yep.
a sensory area? Do you need a space for your paraprofessionals or small group? So
Hmm.
knowing kind of those zones that you want in your classroom and
Yeah.
being mindful of those things, but knowing that you may have to pivot and adapt as you learn your students and what the current needs are, I feel like is a big part. So knowing in the perfect world what you want and keeping in mind as people are like giving things away to where you can ask or beg, borrow, and steal for
Yes.
not steal, but like get things as people are giving them away to better your classroom. But all those things you may think will work may not actually work. And that doesn't mean that you're a failure.
No.
It just means that you are constantly assessing and seeing what your students' needs are and then making classroom adjustments as needed.
Yeah. So the next thing I always organize, I don't know if this is always what you organize, and you can tell us, is the IEP paperwork, because I feel like there
Mm.
needs to be a moment at the beginning of the year where I am reviewing those documents
Yeah.
early. And that's usually sometime around like where I'm trying to figure out the classroom setup. But reading through those IEPs sometimes really does help me of who has preferential seating, who needs to be close to a paraprofessional or a teacher, kind of thing. So I organize my IEP paperwork in a binder for each student. How do you organize
Okay.
your IEP paperwork?
All right, so I keep all of mine mostly in a file cabinet that has their like masters. However, I do create IEP snapshots for each kid, and that includes their goals, any major accommodations, or that includes their nursing plans or
Hmm.
all their related service providers. But then I also so I had that sheet, and then that's something that the parents can read. They have access to the actual IEP as well. But then I like to just have on one page, their name, how their transportation, their mode of transportation, all the parents' contacts, what related services they're getting to where at a glance, anybody in my room has easy access to that. So yes, reviewing the IEPs at the very beginning of the year is definitely essential. I haven't necessarily done it as a binder before, but that's a great idea to have kind of as a home base
Hmm.
for all the IEPs. But I do like that kind of IEP snapshot, overview, whatever you want to call it, and taking time to fill that out. It's a great way to share it with your general ed teachers, your paraprofessional staff, but it makes sure that you're going through the IEP to see that all the components are done. There's nothing that you may need to amend,
Hmm.
change, something that was left out that needs to be added in.
Yeah.
But it also gets you in the mindset of what goals are we working on? How is their modality? Are they able to go to the classroom without support. What does that look like? What verbal cues do I need? And so, yes, taking time at the beginning of the year to review that is essential for special ed teachers. But I will say that another like kind of organization strategy, I know there's like the paperwork aspect, but also I like to think about like that it's a great time to I try to really label everything in my classroom too. And we can kind
Got
of
it.
jump into that in a minute, but because you have so many adults in your classroom or that are working with your kids a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
As a self-contained special ed teacher, you've got related service providers, OT, speech, paraprofessionals, general ed teachers,
Mhm.
parents coming to you. And so creating a system that everybody's on that same page with the IEP, but know where things are and how the flow of your room works is really important too.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that organization of student materials or labels that you were kind of getting into. How do
Sure.
you organize that kind of stuff?
Sure. So I feel like labeling is your friend as a special educator.
Mhm.
It'll keep people from coming to you asking where those extra staples are or where do
Mhm.
you find those page protectors. And so clearly labeling your storage areas as well as your supplies and your student work areas. So this is like, where do you want your morning folders, your morning work folders to go?
Mhm.
Do you need, and if your kids cannot identify their name yet, can you do a picture on a bin for
Mhm.
their work, or do they need a picture on their desk and their chair so that we can independently do those things, but they need that visual prompt to do
Yeah.
that. Do you need to label your drawers of supplies that you have or where you keep? So, like, I have cabinets that have different manipulatives. And so, if it's out of sight, a lot of times it's out of mind, right? And so, being very intentional of like what all is in there, what can people access, but also with the drawers, I have like a picture of a pink eraser and the word eraser on
Mhm.
the drawers. Same kind of thing with the cabinets of where are the paper towels? Where's the hand soap? So that any adult that's in my room that needs to access stuff, um, as well as the kids building that independence as well. But sometimes they need that visual and sometimes they need that word. You can
Mhm.
use real life pictures. You can use clip art. It doesn't really matter. It's
Yeah.
kind of your preference. Different people say different things, but I think that having a picture and a word is definitely key here. And labeling is definitely your friend. And it helps your students and adults become more
Mhm.
independent. So, and this is definitely something to consider as you are setting up your classroom, but don't get overwhelmed with it. I know I usually like have just a blank sheet of paper on a clipboard. And so once my room is set up how I want it, I have my supplies where I want them. Then that's when I just kind of go through and quickly just write down the different supplies that I need and make little just 2x3 cards, like
Mhm.
print out all on cardstock. You can do in Google Slides, on Canva, um, and then print those off. You can either just do it with tape, double sided, not double sided, but like packing tape,
Mhm.
or you can truly laminate them and hot glue them to the surface. But that way they're staying all year long. Then everybody knows it is a little bit of like work on your end, but it'll save you so many questions throughout the year as kids and adults need things.
Yeah, it was always really helpful when I labeled a cabinet on the outside of like student craft materials or whatever it was. And
Yes.
then when you would open the cabinet, inside would
Here are
be
all
the
the little
scissors
things.
labeled, the glue sticks,
Right.
the
Construction
fun
paper.
scissors, construction paper,
Yes.
all the things that you like need for a craft. Literally all in there, like right in front of you, labeled like you said like this size, and I'm like, that's exactly what I would do is make it as big as I could on that piece so that it's like, where's the scissors? I'm like, it's right in front of you. Like right there. But yes, it would be for my students, but also for my staff. For the students that could go and grab their own materials and supplies, I would have that labeled. So yeah, it does really help the flow of the classroom and then promoting independence as well. So what
For
about,
sure.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in that it is consider the flow of your day. So you want to
Yeah.
place items that are frequently used and accessible to what your students need throughout the day, and just to
Yeah.
think about what your students do and to move throughout the day to have access points to what they need. And then the same goes for labeling and doing things for technology.
Yeah, for sure. Like where can I get an iPad? Where can I get the charger? Where's
How
headphones? So I
do I
get plugged.
charge? Yeah.
Yeah, how do I charge these things? Yeah, all these visuals that we do put in time. Yes, you don't need to do this all in August as you're getting set up for the room, but like this is what could come over time
For
as
sure.
we get into September and October. So do not feel overwhelmed with labeling all the things, even though we want to. What about lesson planning? How do you organize your lesson plans? Are you a digital lesson planner or a printable lesson planner? Where are you at?
So I feel like yes, to both, honestly. So I do them in Google Slides. So I have just kind of a template, and then every week I duplicate it and use that template and add to whatever standards or goals or whatever we're working on. It also provides a great way to use it as a communication to the parents as well of what you're working on. You don't have to send the whole thing home, but
Mhm.
so I have it in digital form, but then I print it so that it is listed, and I just do one of the like page protector pages that are kind
Yeah.
of dry erase, so I can slide it in there so the team knows what we're doing, so that anybody coming in my classroom has easy access to it, so they know that when I'm doing circle time, these are the different objectives that we're hitting, even though it doesn't look like maybe a lot's happening. Here are the different standards for all 4 grade levels that are in my classroom. So it's easy just to build upon. I mean, work smarter, not harder here. I
Hmm.
think that a lot of times taking time at the very beginning of the year to do a kind of curriculum map or a scope and sequence of the different goals or themes that you do need to teach for your different grade levels that you're doing
Hmm.
is so helpful, because then it allows you to quickly know what to teach and do in the month of September, because you've already planned out your different themes for your month. And then you're able just to break down those skills into the 4 weeks or 5 weeks that are in the month. So that makes lesson plans a lot quicker to do because you've kind of prepped it on the front end.
Yeah, hopefully you've joined me this summer when I did walk you through how to set up your units for the year and align it to standards and kind of think ahead in that planning. If you didn't, you can check the replay. Those are posted for you so that we can make sure that you are set up on the right foot this school year, because it is so important to kind of take the moment and go, what standards am I teaching? How is that being assessed? And kind of building that foundation for the year, because that's what's going to continue to give you that momentum. So I get that. So yeah, this like digital planner is usually where I go to. I was never a paper planner person. I would buy them and then throw them out. But then it would always come back to just digital, and like I would link my Google slide into, whatever, a Google Doc, or a Google Sheet is usually where I would go to. And then it was an easy access. And then my paraprofessionals had access to it. I could share it with a sub if needed, all those things. So yeah, I love the organization digitally. That is me for sure. Any other tips and tricks that you have for us as we are getting set up for our classroom organization this year?
So I think the only other thing that I can think of is just making sure that we are enhancing our learning spaces. So start with the foundation and the structure that you need, but think about your sensory zones,
Hmm.
and don't overdo. I mean, maybe this will be a little touchy, but don't overdo the decor for
Yeah.
your learning needs. Think calming colors and textures, because you don't want them to feel overwhelmed and just overstimulated when they come in the room because there's so much going on. I mean, do what's in your heart, but be considerate of the students that you're working with to make sure that it's a calming and less overwhelming environment. And then to make sure that we are incorporating, we kind of touched on like with the technology, but using technology smartly from day one,
Hmm.
so that they know the expectations. And same things goes with all of your rules and expectations in your classroom. But that's almost just as critical that first day and that first week of setting those expectations in your classroom with your routines, because it sets the pace for the whole rest of the year.
Yeah, for sure. Any other resources that we could use or that you have available that we could kind of read through or look at?
Sure. So if you want more tips of classroom organization or setting up with your IEPs, there is a 5-day email challenge that you'll have daily trainings and downloads to help walk you through in an easy, digestible way. Trainings are less than 10 minutes, and you have some action steps so that you can take one step at a time and feel confident in leading your classroom this upcoming year. So if that's something you want to check out, I'll make sure and leave it with Heather, and we can also always connect over on Instagram or TikTok at cultivating exceptional minds.
Yeah, I went through your spring challenge when you had it in the spring.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to kind of see all the tips and tricks and then the goodies that you also had in there. So, but I'll leave
Yay.
that as a surprise for anybody who wants to join. So, thanks so much
Awesome.
for being here, Dawn. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.